The night was cold, darker than usual. A thin wind cut across the empty streets of the human colony, making old doors rattle and loose wires sing in that silence. One alien woman walked slowly with her little daughter by her side. Her clothes were torn, her skin pale under the moonlight, and her eyes heavy with fear and exhaustion. The child held her hand tightly. Shivering with each step, they had nowhere to go. No safe place to rest for days. The alien mother had begged for food, for shelter, but every door had closed quickly when they saw her face. The humans in this district did not want trouble, and helping a stranger, especially an alien, meant trouble. Still she walked, because stopping meant death in the freezing night. The child cried softly, "Mama, I am cold." The mother bent down, pulled the child close, and wrapped her in her arms. Her body was weak, but she tried to give her daughter warmth. Her heart ached, but she kept moving, whispering, "Just a little more, little one. Just a little more." As they walked, they saw lights behind windows, families eating, laughing, and resting. But for them, no one opened the door. No one shared fire or bread. The mother's eyes burned with tears, but she wiped them away quickly. She had to be strong for her daughter. After hours of walking, she saw a small cabin at the edge of the settlement. A single light glowed inside, warm and soft. Smoke rose from the chimney, telling her there was fire, telling her there was life. Her legs trembled, but she pulled the child forward. Her heart beat fast, fear mixing with desperate hope. She knocked once, then twice. The sound echoed in the quiet night. For a moment nothing happened, and she thought this door too would remain closed. But then footsteps, slow and careful, came closer. The wooden door creaked open, and a human man stood in the doorway. He looked surprised, his sharp eyes scanning the mother and child. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his hand still holding a small lantern. His face was calm, but there was something in his gaze, something unreadable. The mother fell to her knees, pulling her daughter close, her voice breaking. "Please, if I warm your bed, will you let us stay?" The words shocked even her, but she had no pride left. She was ready to beg, to give anything, if it meant her daughter would not die tonight. The man's eyes widened as if he could not believe what she said. He looked at the thin child hiding behind her mother's arm. Trembling for a moment, silence hung heavy, only the wind moving outside. The human's lantern light shone on the woman's face, showing her shame, her desperation. She kept her head bowed, waiting for anger or disgust. But instead the man stepped aside, opening the door wider. His voice was steady, quiet. "Come inside, both of you." The mother raised her head slowly, not sure if she heard right. The child looked at her with wide eyes. Confused, the man did not repeat his words. He only waited, holding the door against the biting wind. At last the mother gathered her courage, lifted her daughter in her arms and stepped forward. Warmth hit her skin like a wave, the smell of firewood and bread filling her senses. Inside, the cabin was small but clean. A fire burned in the stone hearth, its glow dancing across the wooden walls. There was a table with a half-eaten meal, and a bed with thick blankets. It felt like another world compared to the frozen streets outside. The child buried her face in her mother's shoulder, whispering, "It is warm, Mama." Tears rolled down the woman's cheeks, but she quickly turned her face away, not wanting the man to see. She did not understand why he had allowed them in. No one else had. Humans only wanted payment, and she had nothing to give. The man put down his lantern and walked toward the fire. He threw another log into the flames, then turned to them. "You are freezing," he said softly. "Sit near the fire." The woman hesitated, clutching her daughter tighter. Still the warmth pulled her, and she lowered herself slowly onto the rug near the fire. The man watched quietly, not speaking more. He could see their exhaustion, their hunger, their fear. He poured hot water into a small wooden cup and set it near her hands. "Drink, it will help," he said. Her fingers trembled as she touched the cup. The heat burned her skin, but it was a welcome burn. She lifted it to her lips, sharing the first sip with her daughter. The man sat at the table, eyes still on them. He did not ask questions yet. He only watched. The alien mother felt uneasy, unsure of his kindness, but the child smiled for the first time in weeks. Holding the warm cup close, the mother's heart broke again. This time with relief, the fire cracked. Shadows danced on the walls. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe, if only for this night. But deep inside she wondered, why had this human opened the door when everyone else closed it? And what would happen when the morning came that night, everything felt uncertain. The cold still howled outside, but inside, for the first time, there was warmth, and with it, the beginning of something that would change all their lives forever. The night dragged on slowly inside the small cabin. The alien mother sat close to the fire, holding her little daughter against her chest. Her eyes followed every movement of the human man who had let them inside. She still could not understand his reason. No one had ever shown such mercy to her before. The man moved with calm steps, his boots soft against the wooden floor. He poured hot water into another cup, this time adding herbs. The steam rose gently. Carrying a fresh scent, he placed it on the table and said, "This will help your strength." The woman looked at the cup, then at him, suspicious yet desperate. The child reached for the warmth, and the mother allowed her a sip. The taste was strange but soothing. The girl smiled, her cheeks finally showing a little color. The human saw the change and gave a small nod. It was a silent confirmation that he had done the right thing. The woman's mind raced. What if he wanted something later? What if he was only kind for a moment? Her people had taught her never to trust easily. But her heart, tired and broken, whispered that maybe this man was different. The man finally sat down across from them. The firelight made his face look sharp but gentle at the same time. "You should sleep," he said softly. "Your child needs rest." The woman stiffened, fear sparking inside her. She thought of the words she had spoken at the door. Her shame heavy in her chest, he seemed to notice her fear. He raised his hand slowly, palm open, a human gesture of peace. "You are safe here," he added. "I will not harm you." His voice carried a strange strength, quiet but firm. The mother studied him for a long moment, searching for lies, but his eyes did not turn away. She finally whispered, "Why human? Why let us in when others closed their doors?" The man leaned back, staring into the fire. "My father taught me that a home with fire should never turn away cold hands," he said. "I do not care if those hands are alien or human." The words struck her heart like a blow, simple words, but ones she had never heard before. The little girl yawned, her small body sliding lower into her mother's arms. Her eyelids closed, her breathing slowed. The mother kissed her forehead gently, whispering in her own alien tongue. The human did not understand the words, but he understood the love in her tone. He stood, took a thick blanket from the bed, and placed it near her. "You both can sleep there by the fire," he said. She blinked at the heavy blanket, warmth radiating from its folds. Slowly she pulled it over her daughter, wrapping her tight. Tears stung her eyes as she watched the girl's small face finally relax in comfort. The man returned to his chair, watching the flames. He did not ask where she came from. Not yet. He knew the weight of her silence. He knew her story would come when she was ready. Until then, he offered only warmth, food, and silence. The woman's thoughts refused to rest. She had lost her home, her people, her safety. Her world had been filled with rejection, hunger, and fear, but here in this simple cabin, she felt a thin spark of hope. Hope she was afraid to trust, but could not ignore. She whispered softly, "Thank you," her voice breaking. The human turned his head. Meeting her gaze, he gave a small nod, saying nothing more. Sometimes silence was the greatest kindness. Hours passed and the fire dimmed to glowing embers. The mother lay on the rug, her daughter in her arms, both under the heavy blanket. Her eyes stayed open, watching the man. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, half asleep but still alert. It was as if he had taken the role of a guard, protecting them through the night. The woman wondered if he had family. Why was he alone in this cabin? Why did he look like a man carrying his own quiet sorrow? She wanted to ask, but fear held her tongue. She closed her eyes slowly, drifting into the first real sleep in weeks. When dawn broke, pale light filtered through the cracks in the wooden walls. The woman woke first, her body stiff but warmer than before. Her daughter still slept soundly beside her. Breathing calm, the man was already awake, standing by the window looking out at the snow-covered street. He turned when he heard her stir, his face calm as ever. "Eat," he said, pointing to the table where bread and a small piece of dried meat waited. She hesitated, but hunger overpowered pride. She broke the bread, giving most to her child when she woke. The girl ate quickly, eyes shining. The man watched quietly, not taking any for himself. The woman finally asked, her voice trembling, "What will you do with us now?" The human's eyes met hers, and there was no cruelty in them. "You will stay," he said, "until you are strong again." The simple answer filled the room with silence. For the first time, the alien mother felt something dangerous in her chest. It was not fear, not sorrow, but a fragile seed of trust. The human's choice that night had already changed everything. And as the sun rose higher, warming the snow outside, the woman began to realize that her life and her daughter's might never be the same again. The sun climbed higher, but the cabin still felt quiet. The alien mother sat near the fire, her daughter leaning against her lap. The human man moved around the small room, putting away tools, checking the woodpile, and sharpening a small blade. It was the first morning they had woken without fear of freezing. Yet the mother's heart still carried heavy shadows. The little girl laughed softly as she played with a wooden carving the man had given her. It was shaped like a small bird. Rough but beautiful in her eyes, she hugged it close, as if it was treasure. The mother watched, her throat tight with emotion. Her child had not smiled like this in weeks. The human finally sat at the table. Pulling out a small piece of paper and a pencil, he started making notes. His brows furrowed in thought. The woman hesitated, then asked quietly, "Why do you help us when others shut their doors?" The man looked up, his dark eyes steady. "Because I know what it means to be hunted," he replied. Her heart raced at his words. She wanted to ask more, but fear kept her silent. The man placed the pencil down and leaned back. "You don't have to tell me everything," he said calmly. "But if you want me to protect you, I need to understand a little." The fire crackled, filling the silence between them. The mother lowered her eyes, her fingers tightening around her daughter's shoulders. She did not want to speak, but she remembered the knock on the door last night. The guards would come again. If this man was to risk himself for her, he deserved to know why. She took a deep breath and whispered, "I was cast out." The human did not move, only listened. Her voice trembled as she continued, "My people demand taxes cruel and heavy, even from the poorest. When I could not pay, they stripped us of home and name. They marked us as worthless and threw us into the streets." Her daughter's hand clutched hers tightly. The little girl understood more than her age should allow. The mother kissed her forehead, then looked at the human again. "For weeks we hid, stealing scraps, drinking from broken pipes. The guards hunt us not because of crime, but because they must keep the streets clean of the unwanted." The human's jaw tightened. He understood too well the cruelty of those in power. He leaned forward, his voice steady. "And if they find you here, they will drag us away," she whispered, "and maybe kill us." The child whimpered softly, burying her face in her mother's side. The woman held her close, rocking her gently. The human stood, pacing the floor. He knew now what danger he had welcomed into his cabin, but he also knew he could not push them back into the cold. Finally, he spoke. "You will not leave this house unless I say it is safe. When the guards come, you stay silent, you stay hidden." The mother's eyes widened. "You would risk lying to them." The man's gaze was firm. "I've lied before." His words carried weight. Like a secret hidden beneath them, the mother studied him, sensing there was more to his story, but she dared not ask, not yet. Instead, she whispered, "Why? Why risk so much for strangers?" He looked at the fire, his face unreadable. "Because once someone saved me when I had nothing," he said. The silence that followed was heavy. The mother felt something shift in her chest, a quiet respect she could not ignore. She realized this man carried scars of his own. Scars he did not show, but scars that guided his choices. The day passed slowly. The man taught the child simple human words, pointing to objects and saying their names. The girl repeated them clumsily, laughing when she made mistakes. The mother watched, confused at first, then softened by the sight her daughter was learning, living, not just surviving. In the evening, the man prepared a small meal of soup and bread. He gave most of it to the child and mother. Eating little himself, the mother protested weakly, but he shook his head. "I've eaten worse than hunger," he said quietly. His words hinted at hardship, another secret she longed to understand. After the meal, the woman finally asked, "What if the guards find us here? What will you do?" The man met her eyes without hesitation. "Then I will stand between them and you," he said. The woman gasped softly, her heart beating fast. No one had ever spoken such words for her before. Her daughter, not fully understanding, looked up at the human and smiled. "You are kind," the little girl said in broken human words. The man gave a faint smile in return. It was the first time the alien mother saw warmth in his expression, and it frightened her because warmth meant hope. And hope was dangerous that night as the fire burned low again. The mother lay awake. She thought of her past, of the cruel laws of her people. She thought of the cold streets that nearly killed her child. And she thought of the human man, sitting silently in his chair, keeping watch. He was a mystery, but a mystery that had saved them. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to wonder. Maybe survival was not only about running. Maybe survival could also mean trusting. Her eyes closed slowly, her daughter safe in her arms, and in the shadows of the small cabin, a fragile bond began to form. The morning air was sharp, carrying the sound of boots on frozen ground. The human man stood by the window, his eyes narrowing as he saw shapes moving through the snow. The alien mother, still sitting near the fire with her daughter, noticed the tension in his shoulders. Her heart sank. Fear rising fast inside her chest, she whispered, "The guards," and pulled her child closer. The man did not answer right away. He moved quickly across the room, his steps silent but sure. He lifted a loose wooden board near the corner of the cabin, revealing a small hollow space underneath. "Inside now," he ordered in a low voice. The woman hesitated, trembling. "What if they find us?" "And they won't," he said firmly. "But only if you do as I say." The child clung to her mother. Confused and frightened, the mother kissed her forehead, whispering soothing words in her own alien tongue. Then she climbed into the hidden space with her daughter, curling her body to shield the girl. The man replaced the board, scattering a rug over it to anyone else. The floor looked untouched. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was heavy, cruel, echoing through the small cabin. The man picked up his axe and walked calmly to the door. When he opened it, 2 guards stood there, wrapped in thick uniforms, weapons hanging at their sides. Their eyes scanned the man quickly, then moved past him into the cabin. "Have you seen an alien woman and a child?" one guard demanded. "They are outcasts, thieves, and dangerous," the other added. The man leaned on the axe, his voice steady. "No one has come this way, only me." The guards exchanged looks. Suspicious, one guard stepped inside, his boots thudding against the floor. He sniffed the air like a hound, his eyes narrowing. The mother's heart pounded under the floorboards. Every sound amplified. Her daughter buried her face in her chest. Shaking, the mother prayed silently, hoping the man's lie would hold. The guard looked around, lifting blankets. Peering under the table, he stopped near the fire, staring at the bowls and the extra blanket. "There are signs," he muttered. "Someone else was here." The human man's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "I had guests yesterday. Merchants passing through, they left before dawn." The guard studied him closely. But the man did not flinch. His steady gaze made the guard hesitate. Finally, the soldier spat on the floor. "If we find out you are lying, human, you will pay with your life." The man gave a slow nod. "Then you better not waste your time on lies." The guards stomped out, slamming the door behind them. Their voices faded into the distance, boots crunching on snow. Only when silence returned did the man kneel down. Lifting the wooden board, the alien mother gasped for air, pulling her daughter out, both trembling with fear. Tears shone in her eyes as she whispered, "They almost found us." The man placed the board back carefully, then looked at her. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with anger. "They will come again," he said. "You must be ready." The woman lowered her head.
Shame mixing with fear. "You risk your life for us."
"Why?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Because no one else will," he answered simply. The child looked up at him, her small hands reaching toward his arm. Her touch was gentle, as if she understood the weight of his actions. The man placed his hand over hers for a brief moment, then pulled away. His voice was steady. "From now on, you stay hidden at the first sound of boots. Do you understand?" The mother nodded quickly. Clutching her child, the rest of the day passed in silence, heavy with the memory of danger. The mother could not stop shaking, every shadow outside making her flinch. The human man sharpened his axe again, his movements slow and deliberate. He was preparing, always preparing. The mother watched him, realizing this man was not just kind. He was strong at night when the fire was low. The woman finally whispered, "I thought I would die today, but you stood between them and us." The man looked at her from across the room, his face unreadable. "You will not die while under my roof," he said. The words struck her heart like a vow, a promise she had never heard before. The child fell asleep quickly, safe in the warmth of the blankets. The mother, however, could not close her eyes. She kept thinking of the guards, their harsh eyes, their cruel voices. And then she thought of the human man, calm and steady, lying for them without hesitation. It made her chest ache with fear, with relief, with something she dared not name outside. The wind howled across the frozen land, but inside, the cabin stood as a fragile shield, a small place where hope flickered against the darkness. The alien mother knew the danger was far from over, but for the first time, she also knew she was not facing it alone. The next morning was quieter, but the memory of the guard still hung heavy in the cabin. The alien mother moved carefully, her ears sharp for every sound outside. Her daughter played near the fire with the wooden bird. Laughing softly, the human man sat at the table. Repairing an old boot with steady hands, he acted calm, but his eyes flicked often to the window. Watching, the mother kept stealing glances at him. Her heart was torn between gratitude and suspicion. He had saved them twice now, giving warmth, food, and protection, but deep inside, fear whispered to her, "No one is kind without reason." She remembered her own desperate words at his door, offering herself in shame. She wondered if one day he would claim that offer. At noon, he handed her a small piece of bread. "Eat," he said simply. She took it, breaking it in half, giving the larger piece to her daughter. The man noticed but said nothing. Instead, he stood and placed more wood into the fire. The silence grew heavy, and finally the mother spoke. "You could have turned us away, yet you risk yourself." The man looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I made my choice," he replied. "But you must decide if you trust it." Her heart beat faster at his words, because trust was a dangerous thing. The child crawled closer to him. Holding the wooden bird in her small hands, she looked up at the man and said, "Teach me more words." Her voice was broken, clumsy, but full of hope. The man gave a faint smile and pointed to the fire. "Fire," he said slowly. The child repeated, laughing when she stumbled. The mother watched in silence, her chest aching. Her daughter was learning. Her daughter was living again, but fear still burned inside her. She remembered the guards' cruel voices, the way they searched the room. She remembered how her people had abandoned her when she could not pay the tax. And she thought, what if he changes? What if tomorrow he hands us over? The thought was poison, but she could not stop it. That night, when the fire dimmed, the man prepared his chair near the door. He always sat there as if guarding them through the night. The mother whispered, "Why do you not sleep in the bed?" "It is yours," he shrugged, his voice calm. "Someone has to listen for the boots." His answer made her chest tighten because he was not only sheltering them, he was watching over them. She lay down with her daughter, but her eyes did not close quickly. She kept thinking of the man sitting awake in silence. Was this trust or was it a trap? Her fear battled her gratitude. Her heart battled her mind in the early hours. She stirred awake to find the fire almost dead. The man had dozed off in his chair, his axe still leaning by his side. The mother stood slowly, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor. She looked at him in the dim light. His face softened in sleep for the first time. She saw the lines of sorrow etched across his features. He was not a man without pain. He was someone who had carried burdens she did not know. For a moment her fear melted, replaced by quiet respect. She covered him with a spare blanket before returning to her daughter. It was a small act, but her hands shook as she did it. The next day, the man went outside to cut wood. The mother stayed inside, feeding the fire and keeping her daughter warm. Through the cracks of the door, she saw him swing the axe with strength. Every strike echoed with certainty. She realized then that he was more than just a kind man. He was capable of protecting them. When he returned, carrying logs on his shoulder, the child clapped her hands. "You are strong," she said in broken human words. The man chuckled softly, setting the wood down. The mother watched, her lips trembling. She had not heard her daughter laugh with such freedom in a long time. Still, when night fell again, fear returned. The mother whispered to herself, "What if tomorrow he changes his mind?" She looked at her daughter. Sleeping peacefully, she looked at the man, sitting in his chair with steady eyes, and she realized she stood between two truths, her fear of betrayal and her hope for safety. The fire burned low. Shadows danced across the walls. The man finally broke the silence, his voice quiet but clear. "You don't have to fear me," he said. Not looking at her, her throat tightened, unable to form words, because fear and trust had become two chains pulling her in opposite directions. She lay down again, closing her eyes. Her last thought was simple but powerful. If I can trust him, maybe we survive. If I cannot, we die. And with that truth pressing on her chest, she drifted into uneasy sleep, unaware that her decision would soon change everything for all of them. The wind outside howled like a beast, rattling the wooden walls of the cabin. The alien mother sat close to the fire, her daughter wrapped in blankets and half asleep. The human man sharpened his axe again, the sound of metal scraping against stone filling the silence. Every strike of the blade seemed louder that night, as if warning them of something yet to come. The woman's heart was restless. She could not stop thinking about the guards, about the way they had searched the cabin. It was only a matter of time before they returned, and she knew the man's lies would not hold forever. Her chest tightened with fear, but also with guilt. She looked at him, his strong figure bent over the blade. Why was he risking so much for them? She had offered her body that first night, in shame and desperation, but he had refused, treating her like something more than a beggar, and yet, part of her feared that one day he would change. The man lifted his head, catching her gaze. "You're thinking too much," he said calmly. She lowered her eyes quickly, embarrassed.
I don't understand you, she whispered. Humans.
They always want something. Nothing is free. His face hardened, his voice steady. Not everything is bought. Her chest ached at his words, but doubt still burned inside her. When the child finally fell asleep, the woman moved closer to the man, her hands trembling. "If you want what I offered that night, I will give it," she said softly. Her voice was heavy with shame, but also with fear. Fear that tomorrow he might hand them over. Fear that he might regret helping. The man's eyes widened and his jaw tightened. He set the axe aside and stood, towering over her. "You think that's why you are still here?" he asked. His voice sharp, she flinched, shaking her head. But her tears betrayed her doubt. The man leaned closer, his words like iron. "I don't need your body, I don't need payment. I chose to protect you because it was right." The mother's knees weakened, and she lowered her head. "I only know survival," she whispered. "I don't know kindness, I don't know trust." Her words hung heavy in the cabin, mixing with the crackle of the fire. The man stood silent for a long time, then finally spoke. "Then learn it here for your daughter's sake. If not for your own." Her tears fell freely, but for the first time, they carried something more than sorrow. There was a strange light in her chest, fragile but real. Still, danger waited outside. And the very next morning it returned. Boots echoed again on frozen ground, louder this time, more of them. The man's eyes narrowed as he glanced through the window. "There are 3 today," he muttered. The woman's blood turned cold, clutching her daughter tight. He pulled the wooden board open again, motioning quickly. "Inside, both of you, don't move, don't breathe until I say," the mother obeyed. Heart pounding, lowering herself and her child into the hollow. The man replaced the board and stood ready, axe leaning against the wall. The knock came harder than before. When he opened the door, 3 guards stormed in, their eyes sharp and cruel. "We've had reports," the leader growled. "A woman and child were seen near this sector." The man folded his arms, his voice steady. "You've searched here already." "Nothing has changed," the guard smirked, stepping closer. "You think we believe you, human? Everything about you stinks of lies." One of the guards kicked the rug aside, his boot striking the floorboards. The mother beneath the floor froze, covering her daughter's mouth to silence her whimper. The man's hand tightened around the axe, but he did not move yet. Instead, he stepped forward, blocking their path. "Search all you want. You'll find nothing," he said, his tone edged with warning. The guards circled the cabin, knocking over chairs, scattering blankets. One of them shoved the man roughly, testing his patience, but he did not strike, not yet. He knew one wrong move could bring more soldiers to his door, so he stood his ground, silent like a wall. Finally, the leader spat on the floor, glaring at him. "If we find you are hiding them, we'll burn this cabin with you in it." The man's eyes burned with quiet fire, but he said nothing. The guards left, their boots echoing until silence returned. The man dropped the axe back onto the table and exhaled slowly. He lifted the board, helping the woman and child out. The mother's legs were weak, her face pale with terror. She clutched his arm, whispering, "They will kill you for this. They will kill us all." The man's eyes met hers firmly. "Then let them try." Her chest trembled at his words. She saw no fear in him, only resolve, and in that moment, she realized that this was no ordinary kindness. This was something stronger, something dangerous. because the human was ready to fight for them no matter the cost. That night, as the fire burned low, the mother sat awake. Her daughter slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. But she could not rest, her mind heavy with fear and something new. She looked at the man sitting by the door, silent as always, and she whispered to herself, "He will not take from me, but he may give me more than I ever believed possible." The bargain was not of flesh or shame. It was of loyalty, protection, and trust, and it was far more dangerous than any she had known. The snowstorm hit that night. Louder than any storm before, wind screamed across the land, shaking the cabin walls and howling through every crack. The fire inside flickered, struggling to stay alive. The alien mother held her daughter close, whispering lullabies in her tongue, but her heart was restless. Knowing danger pressed closer with every hour. The human man sat by the door, his axe resting across his knees. He had not spoken much all day, only working, repairing, and watching. But his silence was not emptiness, it was readiness. He knew the guards would return again, and this time, they would not leave without blood. The mother's eyes studied him in the firelight. She thought of all the nights she had begged in the streets, all the doors that had closed on her face, and how this one man, a stranger, had opened his door and risked his life. She could not understand it fully, but she felt its power. Her daughter stirred in her arms, blinking sleepily. "Mama," she whispered. "Are we safe here?" The mother kissed her forehead, her voice soft. "Yes, little one, safe." But her own heart trembled with doubt. The human turned his head, meeting her eyes across the room. His voice cut through the storm, steady and sure. "Yes, you are safe." The words wrapped around her like another blanket. She wanted to believe them more than anything. The storm raged for hours until the knocking came again. This time it was not cautious or slow, but furious and loud. Bang, 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 shaking the wooden door on its hinges. The woman's blood ran cold, clutching her daughter tighter. The human rose slowly, lifting his axe. "Hide," he commanded. His voice like stone, the mother hurried, lowering herself and her child into the hollow under the floor. Her heart pounded, her breath shaking. She pressed her lips against her daughter's hair. Praying for silence, the door burst open. 3 guards storming in with torches, their eyes burned with anger, their boots crushing everything in their path. The leader shouted, "We know they are here. We will burn you alive if you lie again." The man stood tall, his axe glinting in the firelight. His voice was calm but heavy with warning. "This is my house. You will not take it from me." The guards spread out, kicking chairs and tearing blankets. One of them stomped dangerously close to the hidden floorboards. The mother bit her lip until it bled, her tears spilling silently. Her daughter clung to her, trembling above them. The man stepped forward, his presence filling the room. "Enough," he said firmly. "You will not find what you seek, because there is nothing here." The guard laughed cruelly, shoving him hard. "You think you can fool us forever, human. You are weak." But the man did not move back. His eyes sharp. "I am not weak," he said. "I am a wall you cannot break," the guard snarled. Ready to strike? The woman beneath the floor closed her eyes. Certain blood would spill, but then a sound filled the room. The storm outside had shifted, and with it came the voices of other humans. Villagers, neighbors, their steps crunching on snow, their torches glowing through the window. The guards froze, realizing they were no longer alone. The man's voice grew stronger. "Leave or face not only me, but them." The guards exchanged nervous glances. They had power when people stayed silent, but now eyes were watching. The leader spat on the floor, his pride wounded. "This is not over," he growled, before turning and storming out into the snow. The mother held her daughter tightly under the floor, tears of relief streaming down her face. When the man lifted the board, his hand reached down, steady and strong. "Come out," he said softly. The mother climbed out slowly, her knees weak, her child clinging to her neck. She looked at him, her voice trembling. "You faced death for us." The man shook his head, his voice quiet. "I only faced men." The mother's heart broke again, but not with sorrow. It broke with the weight of something she had not felt in years. "Hope," she whispered. "I thought survival was all we had. But you've given us more." The child reached for the man, her small voice soft. "Father?" The words slipped out clumsily in broken human speech. The man froze, his chest tightening at the sound. The mother covered her mouth, tears falling freely. Her daughter had given him the name that bound them. The storm outside slowly calmed, leaving silence in its wake. Inside, The cabin glowed with firelight and something stronger than warmth. The woman realized that night had changed everything. She was no longer just a beggar, no longer just a burden. She was part of something new, something she had never dreamed of. The man returned to his chair by the door, his axe still close, but for the first time, he allowed himself to close his eyes because he knew he was no longer guarding strangers. He was guarding his family. And in the small cabin, against the endless cold, a new bond was sealed, one made not by bargain, not by blood, but by choice. That night, everything truly changed forever.